children, the last module, the first part of our lesson, class 9, democratic politics. What is democracy? Why democracy? We started off with a simple definition of democracy. What is it we spoke about democracy? Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. We try to understand who the rulers are through the examples of Pakistan under Socila. Then we read about China, we saw Mexico, and then through these examples we try to understand and arrive at what are the minimal features a democracy should have. So continuing our discussion today, our main focal point for discussion will be what are the arguments against democracy, why do we say democracy isn't good, and we'll also discuss what are the arguments for democracy. Point wise, we'll discuss each feature today. And then we'll arrive at a broader meaning of democracy. Our lesson started with simple definition of democracy, and when we end up, we'll try to understand what is the broader meaning of democracy. Now, when you're watching this video, please see that you have your textbooks also with you so that it becomes clear for you to understand. Now, what are the minimal features of democracy is? First, I will tell you the definition of democracy, then I will go on to tell you about the minimal features. Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. Now according to this, the first feature is rulers are elected by the people and they take all the major decisions. We saw Pakistan under General Musharraf, why we cannot call it as a democratic form of government, because he did not come to power, people did not elect him to power. Isn't it so, children? Now, elections offer a choice whether free and fair elections are conducted in that country. Next, whether this, democracy, the fundamental principle of democracy is political rights, whether people enjoy equal political rights. And then the exercise of this choice, it leads to a government limited by basic rules of the constitution. Whether the democratic government which is there in any country, whether it is ruling within the limits set by a constitutional law and the citizens' rights, whether we are able to enhance the rights of the citizens. These are some of the minimal features of democracy. Today our discussion will revolve around arguments against democracy. The first feature is leaders keep changing. The first argument against democracy is leaders keep changing in a democracy. What will happen if leaders keep changing in a democracy? It's simple. It leads to instability. If you have a stable government, policies, many policies can be framed, can be discussed, deliberated, and then what is good for the people we can say. But leaders keep on changing very often. Then sometimes decisions get stalled. Projects may get stalled. Now let us see the first argument. Now, for example, in India, every 5 years we have general elections. Isn't it, children? So now, if you see, since independence, the Congress party was in power. Now, it was till 1977 we had Congress in power. Later on, in the year 1977, Morarji Desai, who belonged to the Janata Party, he came to power. And within a span of 2 years, you could see two prime ministers ruling India. Later on, Morarji Desai resigned and Charan Singh, he became the prime minister of our country. So in a span of 2 years, we had two prime ministers ruling the country. So later on, Indira Gandhi came to power. Indira Gandhi from Congress, she came to power in the year 1980. For some time we had Congress rule. In between we had the BJP coming to power. Then in the year 1989-90, we had VP Singh of Janata Dal, he becoming the prime minister. Then we had Chandrasekhar. So what happens is, if leaders keep on continuously changing without ruling for a considerable period of time, so sometimes it leads to instability. That is the first point in democracy, arguments against democracy. The second point is, democracy is all about political competition and power play. There is no scope for morality. Sometimes, leaders, in order to stay in power, in order to advance their career, sometimes they may resort to political competition. Now, this choice, if people are not satisfied with the present government, its policies, its way of functioning, they always have the option to elect another party to form the government. Isn't it so, children? Now, usually, the opposition party always acts as a check mechanism to the ruling party. Whenever they feel that the ruling party is not satisfying the needs of the people. So what happens is, people can always change them after every 5 years. Now, power play is the capacity of the individual to influence the conduct of behavior of others. So politics is all about competition among different political parties. Sometimes they resort to unethical ways to stay in power. Elected leaders, they may have their own vested interests. Sometimes a decision what they have taken may also be bad. Sometimes, when people are not happy with the decision taken by the rulers, sometimes the rulers can be changed, or the rulers need to change the decision in order to keep the people happy. So the second point against democracy is it leads to political competition and power play, and there is no scope for morality. And sometimes any decision which is taken very hastily may be not good for the people. So there may be, and in a democracy, it's based on a lot of consultation between different stakeholders. So sometimes it may lead to delay in decision making. Sometimes decisions which are taken very hastily may be bad. Then you have electoral competition. See, the next point is democracy leads to corruption, for it is based on electoral competition. And what is this electoral competition? These electoral competition are organized by governments. An electoral system is a set of rules that determines how elections and referendums are conducted and how the results are being determined. Sometimes money and muscle power are resorted to stay in power by the political parties. So this is one of the arguments against democracy. It leads to electoral competition between different political parties so that they can stay in power. Then the next point is ordinary people do not know what is good or what is bad for them. We trust our leaders that they are going to take better decisions because they are representative form of democracy. We feel that they are going to do a better job on our behalf. So sometimes there is every possibility that, sometimes when these ordinary people don't know what is good for them, they are not in a position to decide anything for them. Sometimes decisions may go wrong. So are there some other arguments against democracy that you can think of? Which of these arguments mainly apply to democracy? Which of these can apply to misuse of any form of government? See, the thing is, children, democracy is not a magical solution for all the problems. For example, even after 70 years of independence, we have the problem of illiteracy, we have the problem of unemployment, we have poverty. Though so many schemes have been introduced by the government to alleviate poverty, still in spite of them, we are finding that these problems are still existing. So we cannot say that democracy is the one-stop solution for everything, but we keep on trying. Okay, democracy as a form of government, it ensures that people take their own decisions. So what type of decisions we take, that is also equally important. This does not guarantee that their decisions will be good. People can make mistakes. To err is human, isn't it, so children? Most of us make mistakes in some way or the other. How to rectify them? Democracy gives us room for correcting these mistakes. It is also true that democracy leads to frequent changes in leadership. Sometimes this can set back big decisions and affect the government's efficiency. But there is nothing called as ideal. You cannot say that this is an ideal form of government. Democracy is a perfect form of government. But that is not the question we face in real life. The real question we face is different. Is democracy better than other form of governments? We have seen the examples in the textbook regarding how Pakistan was under General Pervez Musharraf's rule. And then we have seen China where there is only one party which comes to power. People don't have a real say. And then we have seen the example of Mexico. So these are all the arguments which are against democracy. I'll repeat once again, children. Leaders in a democracy, they keep changing. This may lead to instability. There is political competition as well as power play, and there is no scope for morality because other political leaders they may adopt unethical means to be in power. Next, there may be delay in decisions. Sometimes decisions may be bad, and there is the problem of electoral competition also. So these are the disadvantages against democracy. But still, we say that democracy is a better form of government. What are the arguments in favor of democracy? Let us see. First one is accountability. Through an example, we will try to understand what is this accountability. We say democracy is a better form of government because it is accountable to the needs of the people. So the first point which is for democracy is, in China what happened? During 1950 to 1961, there was a worst recorded famine in the world history. What is famine, children? Famine means scarcity of food. When people die due to starvation, when they don't get sufficient food to eat. Okay. Now what happened during this period was 3 crore people died in this famine. Many people lost their lives. During those days, India's economic condition was not much better than China. More or less, we too had the same economic condition. China and India had more or less the same type of economic condition. But India did not have such a sort of famine where many people lost their lives. Whereas in China, many 3 crore people lost their lives. Now, India did not have a famine of the kind China had. Now, what did economists say? They said that this was a result of different government policies. In India, we have multi-party system. Whereas, so you have an opposition party, which I told you keeps as a check mechanism to what the ruling party does. Now, the existence of democracy in India made the Indian government respond to food scarcity in a way that the Chinese government did not. They point out that no large-scale famine has ever taken place in an independent and democratic country. Because we have passed, last year we have learned about this food security, where government has tried to see that people don't, through different schemes, they try to see that through this public distribution system. You have heard of these ration shops, where poor people are given at lesser rates than prevailing in the market rate. If China had multi-party system and multi-party elections and opposition party and a free press to criticize the government, many people would not have died in the famine. So this example brings out one of the reasons why democracy is considered to be the best form of government. Democracy is better because it responds to the people's need. We have been telling that democracy is a people's government. People have chosen who should come to power. Isn't it so? They have given the verdict that who should be ruling us. If they don't like the next 5 years, they may elect some other party to power. So a non-democratic government may and can respond to the people's need, but it depends upon the wishes of the people who rule. If the rulers don't want to, in a non-democratic government, the rulers, they don't want to act according to the wishes of the people. So what will happen? There won't be any accountability. A democracy requires that the rulers has to attend to the needs of the people. So we can end up our discussion by saying that our democratic form of government is a better form of government because it is accountable to the needs of the people. Okay. The second reason is democracy is based on consultation and discussion. For example, when we want to elect a class leader also, we take the opinion of all the class students, or you have any doubts to raise. We ask all the children. We don't suppress any child. No, you shouldn't ask now. You should ask later on that way. If you have a doubt, we clear it then and there immediately, isn't it, children? So, when any major decision is to be taken, who are to be consulted? The people are to be consulted. A democratic decision, there are many stakeholders when a particular decision is to be taken. Okay, when a number of people put their heads together, they are able to point out possible mistakes in any decision. Each one comes out with a thought. Finally, they come to a consensus. What is right? How do we move along? Are we moving in a right direction? Okay. Are there any things which, any problems which may crop up which need to be addressed to? In this way, people take a lot of time and then they come at a good solution. But there is a big disadvantage, though it may take time, there is a big disadvantage in taking time over important decisions. This reduces the chance of rash or irresponsible decisions. Sometimes you take a decision hastily and then you repent as to why you have taken that decision. That time, it's very difficult for us. So, the second feature of democracy, which is argument for democracy, is it improves the quality of decision making, though it may take time. But still, it is always good for the country. Now, the third argument for democracy is democracy deals with a method to deal with differences and conflicts. We know about India pretty well. So, in any society, there are going to be social differences of opinions and interests. These differences are particularly sharp in a country like ours, which has amazing social diversity. People speak different languages. They belong to different regions, they have different cuisine, they wear different dresses, we have so many religions, isn't it, children? Now, these people, what do? They look at the world very differently and they have different preferences. These preferences of one group can have a clash with those of other groups, then when a conflict arises, how is it we are going to solve? Are we going to use any harsh methods to solve these problems? Or there are ways in which we can solve a problem peacefully? Can we think over? Can we discuss? How best can we arrive at a solution in a peaceful way? So in this way, in a democracy, no one is a permanent winner or a permanent loser. So different groups can live with one another peacefully. That is what has been happening. See, we see India is the largest democratic country in the world. We set an example to the outside world. Though differences do arise, we try to sort out those problems in an amicable way. So in a diverse country like India, democracy keeps our country together. We don't want people to fight on the basis of religion. We don't want communal politics. We want how best can we run the government smoothly in an efficient way, keep the people happy. Now, these three arguments were about the effects of democracy on the quality of government and social life. But the strongest argument for democracy is not what democracy does to the government. It is about what democracy does to the citizens. Even if democracy does not bring about better decisions and accountable government, still it is a better form of government. Why? Because it enhances the dignity of citizens. It is we who want so and so to be in power, isn't it, so children? It is people's own government. People exercise their choice through elections as to who should rule the country. As we discussed about, democracy is based on the principle of political equality, on recognizing that the poorest and the least educated has the same status as the rich and the educated. Isn't it, so children? Right to equality, if you try to recollect. Okay, people are not subjects of a ruler. They are the rulers themselves. Even when they make mistakes, they are responsible for their conduct. So finally, we can end up our discussion by saying that democracy is a better form of government, or better than other forms of government, because it allows us to correct the mistakes, correct our own mistakes. There is no guarantee that mistakes cannot be made in democracy. Now, to err is human. No form of government can guarantee that. The advantage in a democracy is these cannot be hidden for a long time. See, many times you see in the news channels how we debate on various topics, whether the government has handled the pandemic situation in a better way by calling for an early lockdown, and then phase-wise we have been removing this. State-wise they have been given the option as to how to ease the lockdown. Isn't it, so children? This is space for public discussion on these mistakes. Suppose any grave mistake has been conducted. Now, either the rulers have to change their decisions or the rulers can be changed. This cannot happen in a non-democratic government. Now, to sum up, we can say that democracy cannot get us everything and is not the solution to all problems. But it is clearly an alternative. It offers better chances of a good decision. We learn from our mistakes. We try to see that next time these mistakes don't occur again. Even when it fails to do some of these things, it allows us to correct our mistakes and offers more dignity to its citizens. That is why, for these reasons, what we argue for democracy. It is accountable, it improves the quality of decision making, it solves differences and conflicts, it enhances the dignity of citizens. When we make mistakes, these mistakes can be corrected. For all these reasons, we can tell that democracy is a better form of government. Though there are arguments against, still we try to see that democracy functions smoothly. Now, moving on to initially when we started our discussion, it revolved around simple meaning of democracy. From there we try to understand what are the minimum features a democracy should have. Okay, then we went on to speak about arguments against democracy, then for democracy. Now we'll move on to the broader meaning of democracy. When we speak of broader meaning, when we are moving from simpler to broader meaning of democracy, we are going to speak about representative democracy. What is this representative democracy? It tells you that the most common form that a democracy takes in our times is that of a representative democracy. In the countries we call democracy, all the people do not rule. So we all see so many, India has 1 billion plus population. Are all of us going, do we have that much time to go and sit and make decisions? Okay, a majority, we don't do that. A majority is allowed to take decisions on behalf of all the people. Even the majority does not rule directly. What do? The majority of the people people, they rule through their elected representatives. That is the reason why we have elections. We elect in the state, the assembly elections, we elect MLAs. In the general elections, we elect the members of the parliament. Now, modern democracies involve such a large number of people that it is physically impossible for them to sit together and take a collective decision. So, we give our decision to the elected representatives to take decisions on our behalf. Even if they had, the citizen does not have the time, nor the desire, nor the skills to take part in all the decisions. So, this gives us a clear understanding, a clear but minimal understanding of democracy. This clarity helps us to distinguish democracies from non-democratic form of government. But it does not allow us to distinguish between our democracy and a good democracy. It does not allow us to see the operation of the democracy beyond government. See, democracy can apply to various spheres of life. Maybe it is in a family, maybe the child wants, suppose a child has completed his intermediate, he wants to pursue engineering colleges. Based on the preferences, the parents sit together with the child and take a decision. The child's opinion, parents' opinion, all are taken into consideration and to see that the boy gets enrolled in a good engineering college. Okay, so this democracy may apply in a family, or it may be in organizations, or it may be in various spheres. For example, a democratic decision involves consultation with and consent of all those who are affected by the decision. Those who are not powerful have the same say in taking the decision as those who are powerful. This can apply to a government or a family or any organization. Democracy is also a principle that can be applied to any sphere of life. Now, for example, here he says, sometimes we use the word democracy not to describe any existing government, but to set up an ideal standard. What is the ideal standard? What should democracies aim at? True democracy will come to this country only when no one goes hungry to bed. So, how do we see that the problem of people die of hunger? People shouldn't die of hunger. So, government should see to the needs of the people, cater to the needs of the people. In a democracy, every citizen should have an equal role in decision making. For this, only voting rights alone are not sufficient. Every citizen, they need to have access to equal information as to what is happening around them. Basic education. That is why we have this elementary education which is made free from the elementary education right from the age of 5 to 14. Then equal resources and a lot of commitment from the people. So if we take these ideals seriously, then no country in the world is a democracy. Yet an understanding of democracy as an ideal reminds us why we value democracy. What are the basic ideals of democracy? Who the people are, okay, how authority is shared among them, development, are we sticking to the ideals which are mentioned in the constitution, the issues of freedom, freedom of assembly, speech, whether inclusiveness, equality, membership, right to life, all these are certain aspects of, these are some of the ideals of democracy. In this book, we do not deal much with the expanded notion of democracy. Our focus is about some core institutional features of democracy as a form of government. Now, democracy can apply to many spheres of life. There can be various ways in which decisions can be taken in a democratic manner. As long as the basic principle of consultation, as long as people are involved on an equal basis, then we can say, democracy can be successful. The most common form of democracy in today's world is ruled through elected representatives. Now, here he tells you all the people can sit together and take decisions directly in local self-government. This is how Gram Sabha should work in a village. Now, this also means that no country is a perfect democracy. The features of democracy provides minimum conditions of a democracy. What all we discussed are minimum features which a democratic country should have. Now, he says every democracy has to realize the ideals of a democratic decision making. The ideals of democracy. This requires a constant effort and to save and strengthen democratic forms of decision making. Now, what we do as citizens can make a difference to can make a difference to making our country more or less democracy. So citizens participation, people's participation is very much essential. This is the strength and the weakness of democracy. The fate of the country depends on not what only the rulers do, but mainly what we as citizens do. Our participation should be in large numbers. This is what distinguishes democracy from other forms of government. Other forms of government are like monarchy, dictatorship or one-party rule. They do not require all the citizens to take part in politics. Whereas in a democracy, or in fact most non-democratic governments, they would not like the citizens to take part in politics. But democracy depends on active political participation by all the citizens. Why a study of democracy must focus on democratic politics? The reason being, the politics of India, it works within the framework of India's constitution. We should support and defend our constitution. We should stay informed of the issues which keep affecting us in our day-to-day life. We as citizens, we must cooperate with the government to make democracy successful. Besides our rights, we should also know what our duties are. We should be a law-abiding person and teach others also to follow. There are many acts which are being passed by the parliament. So that democracy can be successful. So weaker sections also should be treated in a humane way. In this way, by actively participating, what we do, one way is we should exercise our voting rights and actively participate in the democratic process. Then we can say that democracy can be successful. These are some of the features. So to sum up, we can say we have learned about the definition of democracy, the main features of democracy. We try to understand what are the arguments against democracy, what are the arguments for democracy, and we end up with trying to understand the broader meaning of democracy. How people's participation can help us in having a democratic form of government. Why their participation is very much essential for democracy to succeed. Thank you, children.